Today, I wanted to talk about mindfulness and what is mindfulness and what is it what is this big loaded term that is thrown around in especially like in therapy and people who study psychology and self-growth and so on. But I would like to start it with you guys. What do you guys think is mindfulness? You can just say straight out like there's no this is not school, this is just you can say whatever you guys want to.
No idea.
I
No
guess
idea.
like being in the moment with things. So like for me at work, I'm stressed a lot and I get caught up with what's the next thing, what's the next thing I have to do. But for me, it's being like in the moment with what I'm doing right now.
Hmm, that sounds great. So you would say like, being in the present moment?
Yes, yes.
Mm-mm. Are there people who disagree with that, or is there people who want to add to that?
I guess being more aware of all your senses, not just being in your head and thinking, but like properly feeling the temperature around you with sounds. More peripheral awareness as well,
Mm.
instead of just thinking.
Yes. So kind of like having a more holistic understanding of what is going around. Mm-mm.
Actually paying attention to what you are doing and not going through the day on autopilot.
That's great. Yeah, that sounds great. So not like only like working as a robot or like just going with habits, but actually like every now and then kind of like understanding like what are you doing and why you're doing what are you doing and so on. Well, I was digging through some internet yet again, as I usually do when it comes to using terms. And I found like one of these terms.
One? Sorry.
Yeah, for sure. You can add two before I say my own.
Being aware of your own thought processes and what causes you to think and feel those things. Yeah, I think that's pretty mindful.
So understanding your own mental states too?
Yeah.
I think this all like, kind of like grasp on the same idea. Like even just like listening to these things, like for a person who has never heard about mindfulness, like for people over here who have never heard about it, like just listening to these comments, like, I think that these are quite well articulated comments. But for me, like, I wrote down that mindfulness is the ability to know what's happening in the present moment without getting too carried away with it. So especially like, in therapy and psychology, like the word mindfulness is like thrown around like all the time and like sustained all over the place, and it has like so many different meanings nowadays, so it's kind of like hard to even use that word even nowadays. There's the traditional Buddhist explanation for it, and then there's like the new psychological explanations for mindfulness. But I think that what they all agree on is that that we are beings that act on mostly on habits. So most of our like actions that we do is based on habits, like the way that we think, and then the way that we act, and the way that we respond, and the way that we react. Like these are all like things that you just do like automatically. So you have like two sides of your own mind. There's the conscious side and the unconscious side. So the conscious side is just a really small part of your own mind, like the side that like where your thoughts that you're currently like understanding that you have at the moment. Like for example, like when you are on a jog, you can be having consciousness over the fact that like what you're thinking at the moment, like for example like about the dishes that you should be doing the next time and so on, and that you're on a jog and so on. But there's a whole amount of stuff that is happening on the unconscious side of your mind, where, like, for example, like, how does your feet function, like what is happening within your stomach and so on, and how your heart is beating. You're not just really conscious about these things, but they're like happening still within you and like in your mind while you're just doing other stuff. And the reason why we have like unconscious and conscious sides is that if we will be conscious about everything, it will be just using so much like energy within our brains that we will just get too tired like immediately. When we wake up, we just understand everything that's going on, and it's like it just drains our energy so fast that it's much easier to just have like habits that just do them automatically. Like, for example, brushing your teeth, you do not need to think about it, like how you're gonna grab like the brush itself and like how you're gonna move around with it and so on. Just do it, and like you can just think about something else at the same time. Like, it would be extremely frustrating if you would have to like make a decision for every step that you take in your life. But that's why why humans have like habits, and why we act on habits and so on. But sometimes in life, these habits that we have, we can come really blind to them, that they just act on, and we have these, and then we just are not that aware of them. Like, for example, like the way that you react to criticism, or the way that you handle rejection, or the habits that you have throughout your day that are not that productive, and or like it's just like procrastinating. That's also like something that like is kind of within the limit of like the unconscious side of your mind. But once you build up this thing called mindfulness, you start understanding more about how does everything of this like work in the first place. So it is like, first of all, just being in the present moment. And that's what we're doing when we're meditating. We're coming back to the present moment, and we are understanding how does different forms happen within this present moment. And then it is not to get so reactive with everything that happens. So, for example, like when you are just driving with your car, you might be thinking about the argument that you had with your parents the day before, and then you might get so carried away with the thoughts and the experience of the past that you already start like reacting on the emotions themselves, or like the emotional state itself, and then you just become sad, and you just become frustrated with the fact that you're just remembering this, and it's just like repeating in your brain itself, and you had no like say about it. It just happened automatically. So it's just like something that just happens within the unconscious side of your mind, that it just decides to put these things in the front. But that's why I think that there's like the traditional wise or right mindfulness, and then there's mindfulness. And I could give a simile for that, quite a famous modern one. And it's quite the same as, like, you can imagine like you having like traffic within your own brain, like actual cars moving around and so on in an intersection. And you know, like when there's like people like who count traffic with like markers, and they count like how many cars are going which direction and why, like from which direction to a different direction, and how much traffic there is at different directions. Like, it's the same as that. So if a person is not mindful, it's kind of the same as like as not like really understanding that there's traffic going on in the first place. It's like being a plant or like a bunny next to the intersection itself. It's like they just understand something is going on, but like they just don't understand there's like actual traffic going on. So with mindfulness, you actually become aware of what thoughts come from where, and where do they go, and how do they have domino effects within your own brain. And like, for example, if you touch like on your finger, and how does it feel, and like what does it activate, and so on. It's just kind of understanding all of this. But the people who are counting the traffic, they are looking at traffic on the way that like they're just looking at it and just non-judgmentally. They're just accepting what is going on. And if someone's breaking the law or like driving cross reds, they're not judging it. They're just counting it as like one one thought and so on. That just goes one direction. But there is also like thing called right or wise mindfulness, where it's the same as like having a police officer next to the people who count the traffic. Well, like the people who are counting the traffic, they're kind of like, whoa, who is this person? And like, what is their point of view? But you can see that like the police officer's point of view is not just like counting like what cars are going what directions. Like they are mostly focused on the fact that like if is everything going according to a plan? Like is there like are cars behaving the way that they're supposed to? And when there is cars that are not behaving the way that they're supposed to, then that should be corrected. So one part of mindfulness is being mindful of this entire experience that we are having and understanding that what is going on in the mind itself. So like once a person is meditating, and what we experience when we are meditating is the thoughts that come up like in the first place, and then being mindful of, okay, like now I'm getting carried away like with my thoughts, or if I'm getting sleepy, then they're like, oh, okay, now I understand that I'm getting sleepy while I'm meditating. But if you do not have like mindfulness, like what most people don't have really a great sense of mindfulness, they just get slept away, or they just get swept away with monkey mind. So going from a thought to a thought to a thought. But once mindfulness increases, then you're being able to be more and more understanding of, okay, now I'm getting carried away with my thoughts, and now I'm getting too sleepy, like once I'm meditating. But then there's the right side of that, where you correct the way that you're acting in the first place. So you're recalling that what you were supposed to do, like in meditation. You're like, oh, okay, like, I was supposed to stay as well as I can with this meditation object itself, non-judgmentally, and just accepting that my mind wanders around the places, and that I will just appreciate the current moment and appreciating the aha moment that I have once I bring my mind back to the present moment and with the meditation object itself. And the way, like the reason why this is like really helpful for people in general with anxiety, depression, and stress and these kind of things is that like beyond meditation, like throughout your day and life and so on, like people get so carried away with their thoughts and like their self-image. Like for example, you go in front of a mirror and then you just look at yourself, and then you're like, oh my god, that guy is so horrible looking. And like the person who's not that mindful just doesn't realize that like all the triggers that go around that. But once mindfulness is grown, they do not have to respond all to the emotions. They can have more like an objective take a one step back on that, and then understand that like this is happening in the first place, like all of these kind of emotions, and that it's not something that you willingly choose to really think in the first place. But once you take a step back and you can like look at your emotions and look at how you're responding to external stimuli, like then you can have an option. Then you can actually think and have an option that, do you want to act the same way as you want to? It's perfectly fine. You can act the same way as you want to, or if you want to change the way that you behave and the way that you think about these kind of things. But that's kind of like what I had to say about mindfulness. But is there anyone that wants to add to that? Because I'm also like learning about mindfulness too at the same time, so I do not know 100% about mindfulness.
I think it... sorry, go ahead.
I find it helpful to sort of implement some sort of trigger or something to remind myself, like you said, building habits, like some sort of mental habit, so that it becomes almost automatic to step back from the emotions and feelings and analyze them. I find that's pretty helpful.
Hmm.
Yeah, if that makes any sense.
Could you be a little bit more precise on that? Like, give a good example.
Like if I'm feeling a certain way, then I will give that feeling a name, so that when I feel that feeling again, I can be like, all right, that's that feeling, and just naming them. If I introduce a habit of just naming those feelings, then it becomes almost automatic, and I don't have to be so, I don't know, always in the present. I guess I can choose to be away or here.
Kind of like it stops a spiral. Like you put a definition to it,
Yeah.
letting it roll. Yeah.
Yeah.
That you can also do that the same thing with thoughts too, or mental states. Like for example, getting sleepy. Like you can put like you can imagine like putting like an actual physical note on the thought, emotion, the physical sensation, or the self-talk itself. You can like put a note on that and just like describe it, not to put too much like effort on it. It's just like naming it to something, like for example, like thinking about dinner, or thinking about or having grief, or having excitement, or something like that. You can just put that note on that once you realize that that has carried you away. So when you put that note on that, you start noting to yourself that, aha, like these things carry my thought process. Like these are like magnets that just grab my attention. Like just like magnets, they like gravitate to each other, and like they just take my mind forcefully towards this direction. And like when you put these notes on that, like on thoughts, emotions, mental states, and so on, like you are going to have a much easier time to recall that, like, oh, this is something that happens, because the mind just repeats itself, and like it just remembers that, like, oh, like excitement, that carried me away the last time, and the next time when I get excited, it's like, aha, like, you know, it realizes it's much more faster, and then you have much smaller time of being wandering around with your mind and so on. But I think there was in Theravada Buddhism, there's like the imagination of like when you get mind wandered, you imagine like taking a small little twig, like a tree twig, out of your body or something like that. Like you realize that there's something stuck in your body, and then you just pull this out, and you just recall that this is not me, and I do not own this, and then you just throw it away into a flame. It's just like it's a like endless process of that once one get carried away with for example the next game that is coming out, then they're like, oh, I'm carried away with the game yet again. Then they can twig it out from their body and just say that, like, this is not me, and I do not own this, and then they can just throw it into the flame and just get back to the present moment. But there's multiple different mental practices that you can do, and they can come from traditional points of view, or they can come from games or just life experiences, like whatever helps with you. That helps with me, that like I twig out like small little twigs from my own body. But I don't know what helps with you guys. For some people they might already know this practice, but for some people they have been hearing about this practice just now for the first time. Is there anything that any other people want to add to the mindfulness talk?
I noticed that it has a bit in common with Stoic philosophy, which is all about like taking a step back and realizing that you can't change a situation, but you can change how you want to feel about it, and going from there.
That's great. So understanding that they are beyond, the external world is beyond your control, but you can control your internal world.
Yes, and being mindful about that, yes.
How about Maine? Did you have something to say? It's okay.
I had something to say.
Yeah.
I wanted to say that it's definitely really nice to have like this kind of mindfulness approach in one's in one's daily life, and you know, it's like it's really nice to have that, but it's like I personally find myself losing focus sometimes, and going back into a kind of state where you like let your emotions go, overwhelm you in a way, or like when you get tired, you start like losing that focus, and then you get to your worst moments in a way, you know, like at least that's how I feel personally. Like every time I lose this awareness, it's always important to, I guess, find that point where you find it again. I don't know. Or you what Buddy said, Buddha said.
That is very true. That most like moments in your life, what you regret the most, you were the less mindful in those situations. So how to have a much more wholesome, much more happier life is a life where you're more mindful in general, that you understand what's happening around, because then you start doing less those mistakes. For example, getting so overwhelmed with anger that you start actually using your physical form to hurt others and so on, and what you will regret for the rest of your life. But those moments are so tiny, they're so small from your entire life itself, but those small moments in your life, they can have the most impact on your entire life. Like the way that you treated your brother or sister or your mother or father, just because you were so overwhelmed with anger or frustration or greed. And that's why mindfulness is important, that the more mindful you are, the more you can take a step back and you start making less of those mistakes based on big emotional stirs themselves. But it is almost 30 minutes again. But if there's anyone that wants to still comment on mindfulness, there's still open room for that.
I guess when you were mentioning anger, I felt like I connected to that more, because I feel like when I'm at work or whatever, I can be having a good day, but when I have a little thing that happens that does make me angry, it's like it ruins my day. And it's trying to minimize those things, because you can have a lot of good things happen in the day, but as soon as that hits, I always find that it kind of takes over. And so I guess I try and apply that mindfulness to try and not make it as big as it is, because we're going to deal with these little things every day, so we can't let them get to ourselves as much, I guess.
For sure. And that's so sad, to be honest, that it's just you have such great moments. You get gifts from your colleagues, or a colleague compliments your clothing and so on. You have great experiences at work, but then you have this one small thing that makes you frustrated, and then it ruins your entire day. And it's so sad that this keeps happening again and again and again. But once a person is more mindful, then they can take a step back and understand that hey, today wasn't that bad, to be honest. I got compliments, I got gifts, and that small little frustration was just a smaller frustration, and those happen every now and then. But it is highly important for people who do meditation to understand what is mindfulness. I could have an entire day of talking about mindfulness, because there's a science of mindfulness, and then there's the traditional right mindfulness or wise mindfulness and so on. But just understanding that mindfulness is being in the present moment, and just not being so reactive, based on habits, reacting based on habits to the external world and to the internal world that you have, but taking a step back and just having more options, and just taking a breath in and out, and just actually thinking that what are you doing in the first place. So I think with that we conclude the talk on mindfulness. I might expand on this topic yet again.